and welcome back to Culture TV. By the end of this video, you should be able to use reflexive verbs along with some time phrases to describe your daily routine in Russian. So let's start with reflexive verbs. What are they? Well, we use reflexive verbs to describe actions that involve oneself. For example, to wash yourself, to dress yourself, to shave yourself, and so on. Can you see that we're adding this extra word at the end, this pronoun? Myself, yourself, himself, herself, and so on. That means that the action, in this case, washing, is being carried out on the object of the sentence. So in other words, the subject of the sentence is the same as the object. The thing or person doing the action is actually also receiving the action or being directly affected by it. So it's not just you washing the car, for example, so you're washing something else. No, you're washing your own body. You are washing yourself. You are reflexing the action back on yourself. These are what reflexive verbs are. Now, you have to understand that in Russian, reflexive verbs are much more common than they are in English. And very often they'll be used when you least expect it, or when you don't expect it at all. That means that in English we might not use a reflexive verb, but in Russian we do. Classically, you will use reflexive verbs to describe your daily routine, and that is of course the topic of this video. Let's start though by looking at how we form these reflexive verbs. Here's just a normal standard verb, it's not reflexive. Мыть. Мыть. This means to wash. Let's conjugate this verb. Я мою. Ты моешь. Он, она, оно моет. Мы моем. Вы моете. Они моют. Я мою, ты моешь, он, она, оно моет. Мы моем, вы моете, они моют. So this means to wash. Again, you could use this verb to say, I am washing the car. Right, now let's change this verb slightly. I'm going to add two letters to the end. Se and ya. And we're going to get this verb. Мыться. Мыться. Pay attention to the pronunciation here. It's as if there is a letter ts there. But actually the t soft sign se, ya, it's all pronounced as tsa, mıться. And this means to wash oneself. So we've turned this verb into reflexive form. We've added on two letters on the end and it's become reflexive. So notice how in English we have to add on an extra word. We add on this pronoun oneself. But in Russian what we do is we add two letters to the end of the verb to get мыться. Let's have a look at how we conjugate it. Я моюсь. Ты моешься. Он, она, оно моется. Мы моемся. Вы моетесь, они моются. So same idea with the pronunciation. The t, s, ya is pronounced as ца. Я моюсь, ты моешься, он, она, оно моется, мы моемся, вы моетесь, они моются. And as you can see, this all means to wash yourself, your own body. Now, you might ask, how do we know which letters to add on to the end? Because as you can see, it differs for each person. You just need to remember that in the present tense, you add on these endings in this order. And the reason for this is actually very simple. If the letter before the s is a vowel, then it will be s, soft sign. Whilst if it is a consonant, it will be s, ya. Simple as that. And you should also remember that the infinitive will always end in s, ya. So it will be the soft sign s, ya. And that, as we said, is pronounced as ta. Now, what do I mean by reflexive verbs being used more often in Russian than in English, and when you don't expect it? Let's have a look at the verb менять. Менять. This means to change or to alter. This is not a reflexive verb. This could mean maybe that I'm changing, I don't know, the settings of something. I change the settings. I am altering something else. Я меняю. Я меняю. However, if we add on the letters s and ya to the end of менять, we will obtain меняться, and this is now a reflexive verb. This means that the subject of the sentence, whatever is changing itself. It is undergoing a change. For example, the climate. The climate is changing. It's not that the climate is changing something else. No, the action of change is being carried out on the climate itself. A person might also change over time. You know, someone's personality or character might change. So it's quite a subtle difference, but you need to get your head around this idea of either the subject, the thing or person doing the action, is doing the action on something else, or the action is being carried out on the person or thing themselves. Here's another example. The verb одевать means to dress someone else, right? So if you are putting clothes on someone else, on a different body, that will be одевать. Whilst if you are putting clothes on your own body, then you will have to use the reflexive verb одеваться. Одеваться. Okay? And lastly, we're going to have a look at this verb. Оставлять. Оставлять. And this means to leave. And usually this means to leave something behind. So I don't know, you might leave your keys on the table at home. You would use the verb оставлять in this case. Now, if we modify this verb slightly, if we change its stem, we're going to get оставать. And if we add on the two letters, ся, we will get оставаться. Оставаться. And this means to stay. So can you see, in English, to stay is a normal verb, it's not reflexive, whilst in Russian it is. So if you want to say, I stayed behind at home, or I stayed at school, whatever, in Russian you have to use the reflexive verb. You are leaving yourself behind. That's where this verb comes from. So it's just a matter of really remembering which verbs are reflexive and which aren't. For GCSE, you only need to memorize a few of these verbs. But if you do continue with learning Russian later on, you will need to extend that list of verbs. So now let me show you this list of reflexive verbs, which will be very useful for you, and I really do recommend that you learn these. So the verb начинать, as you can see, is not reflexive. It does not have the s, ya at the end. It means to start. Whilst начинаться is the reflexive form. So if you are starting something else, I don't know, you're starting the stopwatch, that will be начинать. Whilst maybe if an event is starting, it's starting itself, the whole process of starting is being done or is being gone through by the event. So that will be начинаться. Using the same logic, заканчивать means to finish or to end. In reflexive form, заканчиваться. Находить means to find. And then we get находиться. Находиться, to find oneself. Interesting, isn't it? This actually means to be located or to be situated. So you can describe geographical locations using the verb находиться. Продолжать. Продолжать means to continue. Продолжаться. Продолжаться is in the reflexive form. Now here are some verbs that will be useful for describing our daily routine. These are generally always and only reflexive, so these are not formed in the same way as we've just seen. Просыпаться. Просыпаться. Просыпаться means to wake up. Вставать. Вставать means to get up. This is actually not reflexive. Умываться. Умываться means to wash your face. So not just to wash yourself, but Russians have this very particular verb which means to wash your face. Something that you generally do in the morning. Умываться. Завтракать. Завтракать. To have breakfast. You might know that завтрак on its own means breakfast. We've just added on 3 letters to the end to turn it into a verb. Одеваться. Одеваться. To get dressed or to dress yourself. Обедать. Обедать. To have lunch. Отдыхать. Notice how at the start, although there is both a letter th and d, it's kind of like one sound. Отдыхать, which means to rest or to relax. Делать уроки. Делать уроки. Уроки literally means lessons, but very often in Russian this also means homework. So to do your homework. Then we have ложиться, спать. Ложиться, спать. Ложиться on its own means to lie yourself down. Спать, you know, means to sleep. So this means to go to bed. Okay, so now let's have a look at some time phrases which will act as this kind of glue which will stick together all of our phrases, all of our reflexive verbs that we can then use to describe our daily routine. Here are just some examples. Утром. Утром means in the morning. Днем. Днем means in or during the day. Now yes, the pronunciation is quite difficult here. It's a nasal sound and you don't really pronounce the d at the start. Listen again. Днем. Днем. Then we have вечером. Вечером, which means in the evening. So we're not using the noun on itself, утро, день, вечер, but we're using these nouns in a particular case. And this kind of like forms an adverb. In the morning, in the day, in the evening. Here are some more useful words. Сначала. Сначала. This means initially or firstly. Потом or затем or после этого. These all mean then or after that. Потом, затем, после, as you know, means after. Now to say after that, the that has to be in a particular case. Этого instead of just это. And hopefully you remember that the g becomes a v sound usually when it's between 2 vowels. So there are 2 O's either side of it, so it becomes этого. To say in the afternoon, you actually say after lunch in Russian. После обеда. После обеда. So one other thing that we need to look at is telling the time in Russian. This is a really important skill. So to ask the question, what time is it? You will say, сколько времени? Сколько времени? And this literally means, how much time is there? Сколько времени? There are other phrases that you can use, but this is the main one. How can we answer this question? Well, if it's exactly at the hour, you will say, for example, 10 часов. 10 часов. Час on its own means hour. We've now had to put час into a particular case to get 10 hours. So 10 o'clock. 7 часов, 7 o'clock. And if it's 1 o'clock, then you actually just say час. Just on its own, час. That's fine. Now, if we're using the 12-hour clock, we should ideally also specify the time of day. So if it's in the morning, you will now say not утром, that's an adverb, you will say 10 часов утра. Утра. And утра means of the morning. So this is 10 o'clock of the morning. 7 часов вечера. Вечера. 7 o'clock of the evening. Час ночи. Ночи means of the night. So this is 1 o'clock in the night or in the morning. And again, dня. Dня, again, just keep practicing that pronunciation. Dня means in the day. So very often, if a Russian person says сколько времени and it's exactly 1 o'clock in the day, the most common response to the question will be час дня. Час дня. Okay, now let's have a look at minutes past the hour. If you want to say 11:15, you could simply say 11:15. 11:15. 11:15. You could really be specific and you could say 11 часов 15 минут. What about half past the hour? You could say 11:30. 11:30. 11:30. There are other options. You might hear in Russia пол-двенадцатого. Пол-двенадцатого. This is getting quite complicated now, and what's more, in Russia they actually say 12:30 to mean 11:30. Obviously that's going to confuse you. Just remember that in Russian it's the opposite way around. So 11:30 you say 12:30. The full version of this would be половина, which means half. Половина двенадцатого. Двенадцатого, again, is just in a particular case. All of these phrases here mean 11:30 or indeed 11:30 in the evening, 23:30. What about 1/4 the hour? 11:45 is 11:45. And again, you could say 11 часов 45 минут. One other phrase that Russians use in this case is без 15 12. Без 15 12. Без 15 12. This means 11:45. Без means without, and so literally this is without 15:12. So 12 hours just without those 15 minutes. And you will use the same if it's 22, 25 and so on. You'll just have to be very careful with the declension, in other words, the formation of the case. But we'll look at that in future videos. So all of these phrases here mean 11:45 or again 23:45. Okay, so that's all the theory for today. Now let's put this all to practice and let's try talking about our daily routine. You can now pause the video and maybe you can try to write your own phrases, your own daily routine. If not, I'm going to now show you an example and we're going to work through this together. So here it is. Here's our example. Again, you can pause the video. You can try to read this out yourself out loud. I recommend that you do this. And then you can listen to me. See if you get the pronunciation right. See if you understand what this means. If not, you can use a dictionary. Or then later I will go through all of this and explain to you what all these words mean. Okay, so here we go. Я просыпаюсь в 7 утра и сразу же встаю. После того, как я умылся, я завтракаю. Обычно я пью чай и ем кашу. Затем я одеваюсь и иду в школу. В школу я прихожу в 8:30. Уроки начинаются в 9 часов. В 11:30 у нас перемена на 15 минут. Обедаю я в школьной столовой 12:30. Уроки заканчиваются в 3 часа дня, но я обычно остаюсь на кружок по шахматам до 4 часов. После этого я иду домой, делаю уроки, а потом ужинаю с семьей в 7 вечера. Обычно я ложусь спать в 10 часов. Okay, there we go. There was our example daily routine. Hopefully you saw all of these verbs that we saw already and these time phrases. Let's just go over a few interesting points and nuances. So, я просыпаюсь. I wake up. Now, if you want to say at 7 o'clock, in Russian you have to use the preposition in, the word in. You have to say, I wake up in 7 o'clock, or I do whatever in, and then whatever time it is. So not at, you have to say in, v. Okay? 7 утра, 7 o'clock in the morning. And this word here, сразу же, means straight away. So I get up straight away. После того, как. Now, после того, as you know, means after that. But после того, как means after having. Я умылся. This is now in the past tense. Okay, so after having washed my face. So умыться, the past tense of that will be умыл, and we add on ся because if you remember, the letter preceding the s is a consonant, so it will be ся. Now, if you are a female speaker, you will say после того, как я умылась. Умылась. Why is that? Well, because normally умыла, that ends in an a. A is a vowel, and so after that you say, you add s soft sign. Okay? Я завтракаю. I have breakfast. Usually, обычно. Я пью чай. I drink tea. И ем кашу. Tea, and then I eat what's kasha? Well, that's porridge. It's just in a different case here. Затем, after that, я одеваюсь. I put clothes on myself. И иду в школу. And I go to school. В школу. Yes, pay attention to that U at the end. That's really important. В школу я прихожу. I arrive at school. Приходить is the verb that means to arrive on your feet. So to walk in to school. В, again, at, but we're saying in Russian, 8:30, 8:30. The lessons, уроки, start. Yes, so the lessons are starting themselves. They are going through the process of starting. It's not that the lessons are going on and starting off something else. They're not starting, I don't know, a stopwatch. No, the lessons are starting themselves. At 9 o'clock. В 11:30, at 11:30, у нас перемена. Перемена is your break. На 15 минут. For 15 minutes. Обедаю я в школьной столовой. In the school cafeteria. Now, again, школьной столовой, that's just a case. Don't worry about that too much for now. Пол первого. This is now, be very careful, 12:30. Not 1:30, 12:30. The lessons then finish, заканчиваются, when? Yes, at 3 o'clock in the day, дня. Но я обычно остаюсь, I stay behind, I leave myself behind, yes, оставаться, на кружок. Кружок is a club or, after school session, по шахматам. Шахматы is chess. До 4 часов, until 4 o'clock. After that, после этого, я иду домой. I go home. I really want to draw your attention to домой. This means you are off on your way towards your home. So you are not at home already, you are going home. Going home is идти домой. Делаю уроки, I do my homework, а потом, and then, ужинаю, have dinner, or tea, or what else do you call it, supper, с семьей, with my family. В 7 вечера, at 7 o'clock in the evening. Обычно, usually, я ложусь спать, I lie myself down to bed, right? So I go to bed в 10 часов, at 10 o'clock. There we go. There is our description of the daily routine. Hopefully you're able to construct something similar. Don't worry about the difficult grammatical elements here. That's not the main point. Hopefully by now you know how to use and form reflexive verbs in Russian. You know a couple of time phrases and how to tell the time as well in Russian. If you can do all of that, great, well done. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask them in the comments. Thank you very much. See you next time. Goodbye.